Welcome back. Week 2 is nearly in the books, and hopefully you saw fantasy success, unless you faced Tua, Lamar, or any of those other high-scoring guys. But if you're here watching this, you're probably looking for some waiver wire options. So we've got roughly 10 guys and maybe even a few honorable mentions we want to throw at you, and hopefully we can help you find some success on the waiver wires. As always, if you have questions, rotoheat.com, it gets you access to our Discord channel where you can talk for free with all of us on the team at any moment in time. We are always here to help. With that being said, I'm joined by my favorite, Cody, off the schneid, my friend. We are going to jump into it, and we're going to talk about, unfortunately, there was an injury to Trey Lance, but on the waiver wire should be Jimmy Garoppolo. Threw for a touchdown, ran for another one. What do you think about Jimmy for the rest of the season, and what are you predicting for the quarterback here?
Yeah, this one really hurts. I was pretty high on Trey Lance myself, so not very happy to see him go down. I was excited to see what we're going to get out of the kid, but it is what it is, and the ultimate insurance policy for the 49ers has come to fruition. So obviously this is why they kept Jimmy Garoppolo. So they don't lose much. They should potentially, some of the wide receivers could gain some value here. I could see Brandon Ayuk getting a little bit of a bump up, potentially Deebo Samuel as well. So the team as a whole shouldn't suffer too much with this change. To be honest, there's a lot of people that could argue that this is a plus. There's a lot of people that thought that Jimmy Garoppolo should be the starting quarterback, but obviously I'm not one of those people. What are you thinking about Jimmy G, Brad?
Yeah, I mean, you know what you're getting out of him. As long as he's healthy, everything will flow as it always has. I think follow-up from last week, we'd mentioned about grabbing Jeff Wilson. We saw him get a significant amount of carries. What this does is this brings, when we saw Deebo do running out of the backfield in week 1 and still get the rushing attempts, but I think that kind of muddies the running back waters because you're going to see a lot of guys get touches out of the backfield, which could make things just kind of a headache for the rest of the season, which is why owning Jeff Wilson, owning Jordan Mason, owning TDP may waste roster space at this point, but you may need him. So I am not upset at all with Jimmy G. I think he will keep the offense moving just fine. And this team is ready to make playoff runs, right? So having a veteran under center doesn't hurt. What does hurt, though, is we saw James Conner go out with injury against the Raiders. But we did see then Benjamin fill in. I do want to mention, honorable mention is Darrell Williams. If James Conner's out for a significant amount of time, we're going to see them use a couple of different running backs to fill that role. We know Eno is getting the targets out of the backfield, and he was even getting that before James Conner went out, at least a little bit. So we wanted to mention these two guys. What do you think about the Cardinals' backfield situation if Conner's out for any length of time?
I think it's going to be tough to trust either guy. Darrell Williams had that touchdown today. Benjamin got his touches. Both of them got roughly the same amount of touches after James Conner went out. But again, Darrell Williams got that goal line touchdown. I think it was a one yard touchdown there. So realistically, I think they're going to steal from each other if we do see James Conner miss any time. I think that's something to definitely monitor as the week goes on, and we'll see how it plays out through practice. But with Darrell Williams, I think he was inactive in week 1. Benjamin was the backup. Angel Benjamin was the backup in week 2, obviously got thrusted into a bigger role. So I think they're just going to steal from each other, and you might not want to trust either guy. Benjamin might get the touchdown next week. Darrell Williams week after, whatever it is. So it's tough to trust either guy, but we'll have to monitor James Conner moving forward. What do you think about which guy do you like?
For me, it's if your league's PPR, Benjamin's the guy, right? Because we know he's going to get some targets out of the backfield because he was with Conner. So yes, the ankle injury to James Conner is a significant thing. Prior to recording, I was looking into it, and it's still, he left the game. There's no timetable. It wasn't significant as Trey Lance because he left on his own. You saw him at the end of the game. He was on the sideline. So definitely keep an eye on the situation. These are two guys that you need to look at if Conner is going to miss any time. Next up would be the backup in Detroit. He's been getting double-digit touches per game. So you've seen, I think in week 1, it was 11 and 12 between the 2 weeks. Not a ton. Obviously, in week 1, we saw 2 touchdowns really help catapult him into playable status. But this is a guy that if you're hurting at running back and need some help, he's going to get at least double-digit touches. And there's any given chance he's going to get you some touchdowns just because they're going to use him as in the goal line situations. How do you feel about that Detroit backfield?
Yeah, the coaching staff, Dan Campbell, obviously everybody loves Jamaal Williams in Detroit. It's very evident if you watched Hard Knocks. He's obviously one of the leaders of that team. He's going to get touches. He belongs on a roster in pretty much any format. I'm not saying he's going to be a starter or a flex guy. He's definitely a bye-week replacement type of a running back, in my opinion. But again, the coaching staff likes him. He's going to get his touches. It's just going to be a little few and far between for him to trust him on a week-to-week basis. But he can plug in a bind if you had Kamara out, stuff like that. You can plug him in, and he shouldn't hurt you too much. And you're going to get some sort of volume out of him.
Absolutely. All right, so moving on, we'll get you some wide receivers now. Let's get you Jakobi Meyers from the New England Patriots. So he has been getting targeted fairly significantly through the first 2 weeks of the season. It looks like Mac Jones trusts him, and this is kind of the safety blanket receiver for this team. I mean, I know we've seen Nelson Aguilar do some things, but that's kind of what we've seen throughout his career. He'll have a few good weeks, maybe even having a stretch of games where he's solid, but this guy's the guy that it seems like when things are at their most important, this is who Mac Jones trusts, and we're seeing the targets. Obviously, we're not seeing a lot of touchdowns to go with it, but huge pickup in PPR situations if you have that format, because you're going to get at least 6 to 13 targets so far in the first 2 weeks. What do you think about Jakobi Meyers?
Yeah, I was shocked to see his ownership numbers or ownership percentages across the board. That's insane. In any PPR format whatsoever, he should absolutely be on a roster, and he's a flex play, in my opinion, in a PPR setting. It's classic Jakobi Meyers. He doesn't get in the end zone too much. We'll see if that changes and kind of evolves as the season goes on, but he's going to be on the field almost every single down on offense. He's going to get targets. He's going to get catches. The yards might not be, crazy high, and the touchdowns will be a little few and far between. But again, in a PPR format, he belongs on a roster without a doubt.
Yeah, less than 65% ownership in all the major platforms was crazy to me. All right, so next up was a guy we talked about last week. Had a great week last week. This week, maybe he's a little bit down, but still a guy that we think you need to go and pick up because he's going to keep getting targeted, and Baker isn't going to have terrible weeks like this every week. Now, we know that this is probably what you're going to see throughout the season with him. Weeks where he's really high, gives you 8, 9, 10 possible targets, 100 yards, touchdown potentially, and then you're going to have weeks like this where it's 3 for 32. I mean, it's not a great thing for this to happen, but he is a guy that you can still look at as a depth piece that maybe you can play the matchups and look for the big wins out of him. What do you think about Robbie Anderson?
Yeah, I don't mind the player. It's just tough to trust a wide receiver that's not named DJ Moore in this offense. And with Baker Mayfield as a quarterback, I just do not think that he can sustain 2 wide receivers. And with DJ Moore being a wide receiver 2 flex play for sure type of a guy, he's going to be in your lineup. It's tough to get Robbie Anderson in there week in, week out. He's a guy that, again, you could plug in on a bye week if you have injury trouble, stuff like that, because he's a guy that one play could earn you a start, and you're going to be happy to have him in there, which we saw last week. But it's just going to be tough to see that coming. So play your matchups with him and see if you can kind of get lucky.
Absolutely. All right, so we're moving on to the Giants. We're going to tell you to go grab Sterling Shepard. I know this is a guy that has been a household name for a few seasons, been up and down, dealt with injuries, things like that. He's getting looks pretty significantly now. First week, 271 touchdown, only got 4 targets. This week, shot up 10 targets, 6 catches, 34 yards. So he's getting the looks in the offense. I know it's not the most attractive offense in the league, and things are going to look a little goofy. This week in a PPR situation, he's giving you probably 9 points plus, which if you play DJ Shark, you probably would rather Sterling Shepard because DJ Shark got you nothing. So Shepard is a good depth guy, good bench piece that you can use and feel confident that they're going to target him. So how do you feel about Shepard?
Yeah, we saw it last year too. He started hot, then he got hurt. I think he can be that player because we've seen him do it for multiple seasons. We've seen what he can do. We've seen what he can be. He should fit in that offense really well. And again, we've seen it for the past couple of weeks. The snap share is there. Another guy that we wanted to honorable mention is Richie James. And that's a guy that I've always liked. I don't know why. I liked him when he was at Middle Tennessee State. Coming into the league, just never got a shot with the San Francisco 49ers. Here he is now getting a bit of an opportunity. Maybe he's the guy that they wanted Wan'Dale Moore to be, potentially Wan'Dale Robinson, Kadarius Toney, those types of guys, why they drafted those guys. Richie James seems to be the guy that's plugging in that position and succeeding. So if he is, it's worth taking a look at him. I'm not saying pick him up. I'm not saying start him quite yet or anything like that, but definitely flag him. Keep an eye on him. And if he keeps producing, it doesn't matter where points come from. So go ahead and grab him if he keeps producing.
Win's a win. All right. So speaking of a win's a win, this is a guy that, Gallup's out, has clearly taken the number 2 role, and backup Cooper Rush is comfortable with him, right? Like these guys have been on the second team together for a while. So there's a familiarity, and we saw it this week against the Bengals. Obviously week 1 still targeted pretty well. 9 targets, caught 5 of them for 68. And then this week, 5 catches again on 5 targets for 91 and a touchdown. Until Gallup comes back, this is the guy that you feel comfortable knowing that he's going to get some targets. Obviously, you can't expect a touchdown every week, but what do you think about Noah Brown?
CD is going to get the bulk of the attention from defenses, so it should open them up. And we see this all the time when a backup quarterback comes in. The guys that he's practicing with, the guy that he's throwing to in practice in the preseason, that kind of a thing, we see them succeed. It happens all the time. And this is no shock that this has happened. He's going to get the opportunities. He's on the field more than any other wide receiver except for CeeDee Lamb. And obviously we've seen what he can do. He can put up the numbers. So yeah, this is another guy that I think is absolutely ownable. Like you said, until Michael Gallup comes back, he should be on a roster. And again, it's a guy that you could plug and play in a pinch or on a bye week, something like that. And again, if he keeps producing, I don't think anyone started him this week. No. But if we see a little more next week and he gets up over 60 yards, maybe a touchdown, 6-7 catches, something like that, then he's a guy that you might look to plug into your flex.
All right, so moving on, let's get you some tight ends. We got some quarterbacks, some running backs, wide receivers. Let's get you some tight ends, starting with your Bengals. All right, so Hayden Hurst is a guy that seems to have quickly become somebody that Joe Burrow trusts, at least enough to he's getting 7-8 targets a week right now. Not turning in huge production, but again, if you're in a situation where your tight ends are maybe a premium situation, or even if they're just PPR, this is startable, playable numbers out of the tight end position because tight ends have been so up and down. So it's your team. You tell me about Hayden Hurst and why he is or isn't really what we've been seeing.
Honestly, Hayden Hurst might be the best tight end we've had on this team since I've been a fan of the Bengals. If I'm being honest with you, he can do it all. He can block, he can catch. Joe Burrow said that he's one of the quickest players, the most twitchy players he's ever played with. And that's a tight end he's talking about. So that's pretty wild that he would say something like that. His snap share, should go up. Drew Sample got hurt today, so he should play even more if there was any concern there, which there certainly shouldn't be. He's going to play every down, and he's going to get targeted. We saw CJ Uzomah last year be a little bit fantasy relevant, and Hayden Hurst is miles ahead of CJ Uzomah, in my opinion, as a tight end and especially as a receiver. So yeah, he got 7 targets today, I think 8 in week 1. Mm-hmm. So he's getting targeted, he's on the field, and out of your tight end spot, 8 points, 8, 10, 12 points is more than fine out of your tight end spot. So if you're in a PPR situation, he put up a reasonable stat line today. So I think he's a guy you could definitely go and scoop up.
And these last two are guys that have not quite hit our threshold. So normally we say about 65% ownership across all platforms. Both of these guys are under the 65. So we want to make sure you have these guys rostered. First, it's Tyler Higbee, tight end from the Rams. Week 1, got 11 targets, caught 5 for 39. And then week 2, 9, 7 for 71. This is very, very playable tight end numbers. What do you think about Higbee? Do you feel like this is going to be consistent throughout the season?
I absolutely do. He was startable last year at the tight end position, so there's no reason to think he wouldn't be coming into this year. He had a little bit of injury at the end of last year, but he's back fully healthy. He's playing over 90% of the snaps. He's always on the field. He's very, very trusted by Matthew Stafford. So that's something that you definitely want to look for as a receiver. And it's tough to find that at the tight end position. So that kind of target share is extremely attractive for a tight end. So if he's available in your league, unless it's a super short bench or whatever it is, but if it's tight end premium, something like that, absolutely he's ownable. I think he's ownable in all formats. Obviously we saw it with the snap share and the target share.
And last but not least, the guy that's very high-powered offense. This is an intriguing one, Gerald Everett from the Chargers. Week 1, 4, 34, 54, 1. So he got you in the end zone in week 1. Week 2, it was more. He got a lot of receptions. So it was a 6 for 71. He's getting targeted in this offense. Now, obviously, week 2 is a little different because Keenan Allen was injured. So they were trying to distribute the ball a little different. Got Josh Palmer involved and doing some other things like that. So that may not be the case every week because Keenan Allen's going to see his share of targets. But Gerald Everett, at least at worst, is probably going to get you 3 to 4 receptions, 40, 50, 60 yards. That's respectable in this season. How do you feel about Gerald Everett?
Yeah, Jared Cook was ownable last year as a tight end with this offense, and Gerald Everett should be quite a bit ahead of him, as a receiver. We saw it in week 1. He got targeted in the red zone. He got targeted in the red zone in week 2. It led to a pick six, a 99-yard pick six. But realistically, that ball shouldn't have been thrown to him. It was pretty obvious how tired he was, everything like that. I would like to see him be on the field a little bit more. He's not asked to block a ton, so it's not the end of the world that he's not on the field, but his snap share is a little lower than I would like to see. It's certainly lower than Hayden Hurst. It's lower than Tyler Higbee that we spoke about already, but he's another guy that can get you that 8 to 12 point threshold at the tight end position. And that's what you want to look for, is a high powered offense, which he resides in. So there you go.
And there it is. All right. So those are the 10 guys that we want to recommend for this week, but there are others. If you guys have guys in your league, put them in the comments. We absolutely will get back to you and help you figure out who to go after. If you need us immediately, rotoheat.com, go to our Discord, join the conversation. We have a redraft chat. We have dynasty chats. We have all sorts of chats. So we can help you out. We can answer your questions. We got live shows throughout the week. If you need help live, feel free to jump in here, like, subscribe, hit the notification icon. You can stay up to date anytime we drop shorts. We've been dropping tons of YouTube shorts. We've got all sorts of live stuff throughout the season, and we hope that this has been helpful. If it has, share this with a friend. Let us know what we can do to help you, and we'll see you guys later.